A blind bobcat kitten was about to be put down when the vet read its collar and screamed. What was supposed to be a quiet, routine visit to the clinic suddenly turned into something terrifying. The tiny animal wasn't just another strike, carried a secret that could destroy lives. A young man who had nothing to lose suddenly found himself standing against a force so powerful it could crush him in an instant. But why was the kitten marked? What dark truth was hidden in that collar? And when the truth finally comes out, will it save an innocent life, or put everyone in danger? The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of Valley View Veterinary Clinic as Eli Turner pushed open the heavy glass door. The small bell above chimed softly, announcing his arrival. In his arms, wrapped carefully in a soft flannel blanket, lay the tiny bobcat kitten. Its clouded blue eyes stared sightlessly ahead while its small chest rose and fell with each shallow breath. The waiting room was mercifully empty. Eli didn't think he could handle sympathetic looks from pet owners right now. His throat felt tight, and his hands trembled slightly as he approached the front desk. The kitten shifted in his arms, letting out a tiny mewl that made his heart clench. "I have an appointment with Dr. Price," he managed to say to the receptionist, his voice rougher than usual. For euthanasia, the word felt like acid in his mouth. The receptionist's expression softened with understanding as she picked up the phone to notify the doctor. Eli moved to sit in one of the hard plastic chairs, carefully cradling the bundle against his chest. The kitten's warmth seeped through the blanket, and he found himself unconsciously stroking its small head through the fabric. "It's not fair," he whispered, too quietly for anyone else to hear. "You deserve a chance." The sound of approaching footsteps made him look up. Dr. Caroline Price stood in the doorway to the exam rooms, her white coat pristine and her expression professionally neutral. She was younger than Eli had expected, probably in her early 30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Mr. Turner," she said, consulting the clipboard in her hands. "Please come with me." Eli rose slowly, as if his feet were made of lead. Each step down the sterile hallway felt like a betrayal of everything he believed in. The exam room was small but well lit, with a stainless steel table in the center that seemed to gleam accusingly under the fluorescent lights. "Could you place the kitten on the table, please?" Dr. Price asked, her tone gentle but clinical alike. Arms tightened involuntarily around his precious burden. Just give me a minute." His voice cracked slightly. "I found her 3 days ago." "Her mother was?" He swallowed hard. "There was a hunting accident on Caldwell's Preserve. She was wearing one of their tracking collars." Dr. Price's expression flickered briefly at the mention of Caldwell, but she quickly schooled her features back to professional neutrality. "I understand this is difficult," she said, moving to prepare her instruments. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is end suffering." "She's not suffering," Eli protested, finally unwrapping the blanket to reveal the tiny creature. The kitten's gray fur was dull but clean. He'd been caring for her as best he could. "She's blind, yes, and she needs help to eat, but she's fighting. She wants to live." Dr. Price paused in her preparations, studying the kitten more closely. Despite its blindness, the small animal turned its head toward the sound of their voices, ears twitching with interest. Its nose quivered, taking in the new sense of the exam room. "The authorities have deemed her a liability," Dr. Price said carefully. But Eli noticed she hadn't resumed preparing the euthanasia drugs. "Wild animals, especially predators, can't be kept as pets. You know this, Mr. Turner." "I know," Eli said, quietly, stroking the kitten's head with one rough finger. The tiny creature leaned into his touch. "But I also know that every life has value. Sometimes we just need to look harder to see it." Dr. Price's professional mask slipped slightly, revealing a flash of something: uncertainty, perhaps, or recognition of a shared belief. She moved closer, reaching out to examine the kitten more thoroughly. Her hands were gentle as she checked its eyes, its reflexes, its overall condition. "You've been caring for her?" she asked, noting the kitten's clean fur and alert demeanor. Eli nodded. "I volunteer at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. I know how to bottle feed, how to check for dehydration. She's small, but she's strong." His voice grew passionate as he continued. "She follows sounds perfectly, compensating for her blindness. She's learning to find her food bowl by smell. She's adapting." The kitten chose that moment to stretch out a tiny paw, batting at Dr. Price's stethoscope as it dangled near her. The doctor's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "The order for euthanasia came from higher up," she said slowly, straightening up. "From Caldwell's office, I assume?" "Yes," Eli confirmed, his jaw tightening. "They said a blind predator is too dangerous to rehabilitate, that it would be a liability to release it, and they can't risk." He trailed off, frustration evident in his voice. Dr. Price moved to lean against the counter, her arms crossed. She studied Eli for a long moment, then looked back at the kitten, who was now attempting to crawl toward the edge of the exam table. Eli quickly steadied the small creature. "Tell me, Mr. Turner," she said finally, "why did you really bring her here? You clearly don't want to euthanize her. You could have." She left the sentence unfinished. But the implication was clear. He could have simply disappeared with the kitten. taken it somewhere else. Eli met her gaze steadily. Because I believe in doing things the right way. Because I hoped, he took a deep breath. I hoped that someone else might see what I see. That this kitten deserves a chance, regardless of what powerful men think is convenient. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken understanding. Dr. Price moved back to the exam table, her fingers drumming thoughtfully on its surface. The kitten turned toward the sound, ears perked with curiosity. Mr. Turner, she said, finally, her voice carefully measured. You understand that keeping a wild animal without proper permits is illegal, that defying a direct order for euthanasia could have serious consequences for both of us. I understand, he said quietly, but his eyes never left the kitten. Dr. Price reached out again, this time running her hand along the kitten's spine, feeling its strength, its will to live. The small creature arched into her touch, purring softly. The paperwork says this kitten was brought in for euthanasia, she said slowly, meaningfully. It would be a tragedy if something were to happen before the procedure could be performed. If, for instance, the kitten were to somehow escape during examination. Eli's breath caught in his throat as he processed her words. Dr. Price Caroline? She corrected softly. And I haven't said anything. I'm simply noting that sometimes, despite our best efforts, wild animals can be unpredictable. They can slip away when we least expect it. The kitten mewed softly, as if adding its opinion to the conversation. Its tiny paws kneaded the air as it sought balance on the smooth metal surface, showing more fight than fear, despite its blindness. I need to step out for a moment to retrieve some additional paperwork, Carolyn said, her voice returning to its professional tone. I'll be gone for exactly 5 minutes. Whatever happens during that time is, of course, completely beyond my control. She moved toward the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Mr. Turner, yes. Whatever happens in the next 5 minutes, make it count. With that, she slipped out of the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Eli stood frozen for a moment, hardly daring to believe what had just happened. The kitten bumped against his hand, seeking attention, and the touch snapped him back to reality. Moving quickly but carefully, he rewrapped the small creature in its blanket, making sure it was secure and comfortable. His heart pounded as he opened the exam room door, peering out into the hallway. It was empty. From somewhere in the clinic, he could hear Caroline's voice, apparently engaged in a lengthy conversation with her receptionist about scheduling conflicts. A perfect distraction. The back door of the clinic was exactly where she had mentioned it would be in case of emergency, a casual comment that now revealed its true purpose. Eli slipped through it quietly, emerging into the gathering dusk. The kitten stirred in his arms but remained silent, as if understanding the need for stealth. As he hurried toward his truck, parked at the far end of the lot, Eli sent up a silent prayer of thanks for people like Caroline Price, people who, when faced with a choice between what was legal and what was right, found creative ways to let kindness prevail. The kitten snuggled closer to his chest, its small heart beating steadily. Against his own, he couldn't see the clinic anymore, but he could imagine Caroline returning to the empty exam room, her expression carefully surprised, her paperwork recording yet another mysterious case of wildlife behaving unpredictably. Some would call what they'd done wrong, but as Eli felt the tiny life he'd saved pressing trustingly against him, he knew that sometimes the right path wasn't the one marked out by rules and regulations. Sometimes it was the one that led toward hope, toward life, toward giving every creature, no matter how small or vulnerable, the chance they deserved. Dr. Price's professional demeanor softened as she approached the examination table where Eli had finally placed the tiny bobcat. Her skilled hands moved with gentle precision as she began checking the kitten's vital signs. The small creature lay surprisingly still, as if sensing the importance of this moment. Her heart rate is steady, Carolyn noted, pressing the stethoscope against the kitten's chest, and despite everything, she seems to be maintaining her body temperature well. She ran her fingers carefully along the kitten's spine, checking for any obvious injuries or abnormalities. Eli stood close by, his hands gripping the edge of the metal table. I've been feeding her every 4 hours with a special formula. She's been taking it well. Carolyn nodded, continuing her examination. Her fingers brushed against something underneath the kitten's fur, and she paused. There's something here. Carefully parting the gray fur around the neck, she revealed an old leather collar, worn and weather-beaten. A collar. Eli leaned in closer, confusion evident in his voice. But she's a wild animal. Why would she? Fingers trembled slightly as she turned the collar over. There, stamped into the aged leather and faded but unmistakable letters, was a name that made her blood run cold. Property of Hunter Caldwell, Circle C Preserve. The color drained from her face as she read the words, and her hands dropped to her sides. She took an involuntary step backward, bumping into the cabinet behind her. The metal instruments on their tray rattled with the impact. Dr. Price, Eli's voice was filled with concern. What is it? Caroline's eyes darted to the closed door of the examination room, then back to Eli. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. This kitten, she's from Caldwell's private hunting preserve. But wild animals don't wear collars, Mr. Turner. Not unless what? Eli pressed. though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. Caroline ran a hand through her hair, her professional composure cracking. There have been rumors, stories about what goes on at the Circle C Preserve. Exotic animals being brought in for private hunts, protected species. She swallowed hard. But nobody's ever had proof. Nobody's dared to look too closely. Hunter Caldwell practically owns this county. Eli looked down at the tiny kitten, who was now pawing blindly at the air. So this collar is evidence, Caroline finished. Evidence of something illegal, something dangerous. She began pacing the small room, her shoes clicking against the linoleum floor. Mr. Turner, you don't understand. Caldwell isn't just some wealthy rancher. He's got connections everywhere. Local government, law enforcement, people who've crossed him tend to disappear. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as silence filled the room. The kitten mewed softly, the sound somehow amplifying the tension in the air. Eli reached out to stroke her fur, his touch gentle but his jaw set with determination. What exactly are you saying, Dr. Price? Caroline stopped pacing and faced him directly. I'm saying that this kitten isn't just a blind orphan anymore. She's evidence of something much bigger. And if Caldwell finds out she's here, she left. The sentence unfinished, but her meaning was clear. The weight of the situation settled over them both. Through the window, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the examination room. The kitten, oblivious to the gravity of her situation, had curled into a small ball on the metal table, her tiny body rising and falling with each breath. They told me to bring her in for euthanasia, Eli said slowly, his voice thick with realization. But that wasn't about her being too weak to survive, was it? They knew what she was, what she could prove. Caroline shook her head, her expression grim. Probably not. Caldwell has people everywhere. They must have found out you rescued her. She reached out to touch the collar again, as if confirming it was real. This changes everything. The reality of their situation hung heavy in the air. What had started as a simple, if heartbreaking, euthanasia appointment had transformed into something far more complex and dangerous. The tiny blind kitten on the table was no longer just a struggling orphan. She was physical proof of corruption and illegal activities that powerful men would kill to keep hidden. Caroline's fingers traced the stamped letters on the collar once more, her touch light but deliberate. The name Hunter Caldwell seemed to mock them from the worn leather, a silent testament to the danger they now faced. The kitten stirred under her touch, turning her clouded blue eyes in their direction, unknowingly at the center of a storm that was just beginning to brew. The silence in the examination room grew heavier as Eli Turner stared at the collar, his gentle hands still protectively cradling the blind bobcat kitten. His voice, when it finally came, was quiet but firm. Dr. Price, I need to know everything. What exactly happens at Caldwell's Preserve? Caroline Price shifted uncomfortably, her professional demeanor cracking under the weight of long-held secrets. She glanced nervously at the window, then moved to pull down the blinds. The late afternoon sun cast striped shadows across the examination table as she did so. It's complicated, she began, her words careful and measured. The Circle C Preserve is supposed to be a private hunting ranch. Legal game, regulated hunting seasons, everything by the book. She paused, running her fingers along the edge of the metal examination table. But there have been whispers, things that don't add up. What kind of things? Eli pressed. His attention split between Caroline's words and the small creature purring softly in his arms. Caroline took a deep breath. Last year, one of my technicians swore she saw exotic tigers being transported in the middle of the night. Bengal tigers. Mr. Turner. In rural Texas? She shook her head. A month later, she took a job 2 states away. Very suddenly. The kitten stirred in Eli's arms, and he adjusted his hold, gentling her with a soft touch. And that's not all, is it? No. Caroline's voice dropped even lower. There are stories about shipping containers arriving at odd hours, about sounds in the night, roars and calls that don't belong to any native species, about endangered animals being brought in for wealthy clients who want special trophies. Her face twisted with disgust at the last words. And nobody's done anything. Eli's voice rose slightly, causing the kitten to stir. Caroline glanced anxiously at the door. You don't understand. Caldwell owns half the county council. His brother-in-law is the sheriff. The game wardens, who should investigate, their department depends on his generous donations to function. She ran a hand through her hair, displacing her usually neat appearance. Anyone who's ever tried to look too closely either backs off or leaves town. Fast. Eli looked down at the tiny bobcat in his arms, her clouded eyes somehow more innocent and vulnerable in light of these revelations. So this collar probably means she was born on his preserve, part of his collection. Caroline's voice hardened. Her mother was likely one of his special attractions. And now she's evidence. Eli finished, his jaw set in a determined line. Evidence that could get us both killed. Caroline added bluntly, Mr. Turner, you need to understand what we're dealing with. This isn't just about saving one kitten anymore. Caldwell's operation, it's big, international, probably the kind of business that powerful men protect at any cost. The kitten chose that moment to mew softly, her tiny sound filling the tense silence. Eli's fingers found the spot behind her ears that made her purr, the simple action seeming to steel his resolve. "So that's why they want her euthanized," he said slowly. "Not because she's blind or weak, but because she's proof. Proof of what's happening at Circle C." Carolyn nodded grimly. The order probably came from Caldwell himself, through official channels, clean, legal, and completely deniable. She reached for the syringe of euthanasia solution on the counter, her hand trembling slightly. "Mr. Turner, Eli, we need to think carefully about what we do next. Caldwell isn't someone you want as an enemy," but Eli was already shaking his head, drawing the kitten closer to his chest. "No," he said simply, "no." Caroline's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Turner, you're not thinking clearly. This isn't just about I said no." His voice was quiet but firm, carrying a strength that seemed to surprise them both. "I won't let them kill her just to cover up their crimes. She deserves better than that. She deserves to live." Carolyn agreed softly. "But are you prepared for what that means? For what Caldwell might do?" The kitten squirmed in Eli's arms, turning her face toward his chest as if seeking protection. He adjusted his hold, one rough hand gently stroking her fur. "I've spent my whole life helping animals that everyone else had given up on," he said, "working with wildlife rescue, rehabilitating the ones people said were too far gone. And you know what I learned? Caroline waited, the syringe still in her hand. "I learned that sometimes the smallest creatures have the biggest impact. That standing up for one innocent life can change everything." His eyes met Caroline's, steady and determined. "This kitten isn't just evidence of Caldwell's crimes. She's a victim of them, and I won't let them make me complicit in covering up their cruelty." Caroline set the syringe down, her shoulders sagging slightly. "You realize what you're doing? The risk you're taking?" "Yes." Eli's answer was immediate and certain. "And I'm asking you to help me, not just as a vet, but as someone who knows this is wrong." The examination room fell silent except for the soft purring of the kitten. Caroline looked at the small creature, then at the collar that had changed everything, and finally at Eli's determined face. In his expression, she saw something that had become rare in their town. Genuine courage in the face of power. "If we do this," she said slowly, "we'll need to be careful. Very careful. Caldwell has eyes everywhere, and he won't stop looking for her." "Then we'll be careful," Eli replied, his voice gaining strength. "But I'm not letting them hurt her. Not now. Not ever." The kitten stirred again, her tiny paw reaching out to touch Eli's chest. Despite her blindness, she seemed to sense the safety of his presence. The protection he offered, her trust, innocent and complete, stood in stark contrast to the dangerous world they had uncovered. Carolyn moved to her medical cabinet, pulling out supplies with practiced efficiency. "She'll need special care, regular checkups, proper nutrition, protection." She paused, looking back at Eli. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Eli's answer was to gently scratch under the kitten's chin, earning a louder purr. "I've never been more sure of anything." The decision hung in the air between them, not just to save one small life, but to take a stand against the corruption that had poisoned their community. In choosing to protect the blind Bobcat Kitten, they were challenging a power that had long ruled through fear and influence. Caroline began preparing medications and supplies, her movements precise despite her obvious nervousness. "We'll need to create a record showing the euthanasia was performed, make it official, and then," she took a deep breath, "then we'll need to make sure she disappears." "Completely?" Eli nodded, understanding the magnitude of what they were undertaking. The tiny creature in his arms had transformed from a burden into something more, a symbol of resistance against cruelty, and perhaps their only chance to expose the truth about Hunter Caldwell's empire of corruption. The kitten purred contentedly, unaware that her survival had just become an act of defiance against one of the most powerful men in the county. In choosing to protect her, Eli and Caroline had taken their first steps down a dangerous path, one that would test their courage and resolve in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Inside the cramped back room of the clinic, Eli sat on a worn stool. The kitten lay nestled in his lap, its breath soft and steady. Eli's heart ached at the little creature's fragility, its cloudy blue eyes shut tight, dreaming whatever dreams Bobcat kittens might have. A bowl of warmed milk sat nearby, and Eli dipped his finger, offering it to Luna. The kitten latched on, her tiny tongue flicking against his skin in eager sips. Caroline hovered near, arms crossed, but her stance softened by Eli's silent resolve. "You're risking a lot, you know," she murmured, nodding towards Luna. "Caldwell's not just some rumor. If his men find out—" "I know," Eli interrupted, eyes locked on the kitten. "But look at her, Caroline. She didn't ask for—" This a sigh escaped Caroline's lips, part frustration, part admiration. "All right, let's see her through for now." Time passed in hushed cooperation. Caroline busied herself with preparations, vials of supplements, medically sanctioned milk for wildcats, and warm cloths to line the makeshift bed. Eli's determination seemed infectious, planting the seeds of defiance, even in those weary of Caldwell's shadows. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting gold across fields tinged with evening's approach. But tranquility evaporated when the rumble of unfamiliar cars interrupted the small town's quiet. Trucks bearing men with serious faces parked with purpose on the street. The visitors scattered to prowl through shops, speaking to any they encountered. The clinic's bay window, Truces of the local idled towards his task. He watched as men in crisp jackets moved with the air of those who issue commands. Each exchange was brief, the men nodding curtly before moving on, a collective hunger for information evident in their tight-knit formation. Caroline joined Eli at the window, her sharp eyes taut with worry. "They'll make their way here soon," she whispered. "They're searching, Eli. If they find us with her, then we make sure they don't." Eli's voice held firm, a quiet resolve that betrayed not a fraction of fear. Knowing at him, "We protect what matters." Inside the clinic, tension wove itself into the atmosphere. Threading through the walls, the worn linoleum, the distinct scent of antiseptics. Eli resumed caring for Luna, his every action deliberate, protective. Everything had shifted in that room. The kitten's small life, now a fulcrum upon which larger shadows hovered. The men drew closer. The hum of their inquiries, a backdrop to this newly kindled alliance. Caroline's expertise and Eli's unwavering humanity clashing with Caldwell's silent, pervasive menace. Eli trudged towards his modest cottage, set against rolling fields that shimmered under the moonlight. The crisp night air whispered of peace, though his heart thrummed with unease. Each step felt heavier, burdened by the silence that met him, a silence too unnatural. Swinging open the wooden door, darkness greeted him. Reaching for the light, reality struck him harshly. His home lay in chaos. Chairs toppled, drawers gutted, personal items shoveled to the floor, papers scattered like autumn leaves around his feet. Panic seized him, but a rustle from the shadows snapped his senses alert. Looking for this? A voice, smooth and threatening, filled the space. Eli spun around, just as a shadowy figure lunged from the corner. Man built broad, his movements precise. Caldwell's enforcer, scowling beneath the brim of a low hat. Eli's heart leaped into his throat, survival instincts firing. The first punch connected, pain sparking through Eli's body, but fear ignited his own strength. He retaliated, jabbing frantically, the room twisting into a blur of movement. The struggle felt endless, the air thick with grunts and clattering furniture. It was Eli's quiet tenacity against the brute force of Caldwell's hired muscle. Just as the man's fist drove towards him again, Eli ducked and landed a desperate kick beneath the ribs, sending the assailant stumbling into the corner. More would come. Eli knew it. With adrenaline roaring through his veins, he dashed out, leaving the man groaning on his kitchen floor. Later, in the clinic's warm glow, Eli winced under gentle fingers, Caroline's touch transforming antiseptic burn into comfort. "He was waiting for me," Eli explained through gritted teeth, the reality settling like stone in his gut. "Caldwell won't stop." Caroline's eyes, though brimming with concern, locked with his. "Ben, we prepare," she offered, binding a particularly nasty bruise with careful hands. Through the shared silence, their bond solidified, souls bound by a fragile life they'd chosen to protect. Eli breathed in, feeling Caroline's resolve beside him, the sleeping kitten in the next room. This was no longer about resisting destiny or defying orders. It was survival, pure and simple, but within survival. Eli sensed a higher calling, a chance to be something greater than himself, to stand for those who could not. The choice remained, retreat into safety or face the encroaching darkness. Caroline's hand steadied his and, for a moment, strength surged within him. For Eli, the ambush solidified one truth. Failure meant more than losing a battle. It meant surrendering hope itself, but fresh bandages and steeled resolve. Eli sat hunched over a wooden desk, cluttered with papers, maps, and photographs. Each one pieced a part of the puzzle that had once been hidden from his view, but now began to reveal Caldwell's sinister world. The stakes were higher, the danger deeper than Eli had ever imagined. He found the first chilling clue in an old Altuve black and white photo, tucked beneath stacks of generic purchase orders. It showed wealthy men perched in thick hunting attire, rifles slung like appendages as they posed next to lifeless forms of exotic animals. A leopard, stiff and still, lay at the edge of the frame, its eyes vacant. Beside it, a name scrawled, in looping cursive, Hunter Caldwell. Months of whispers and rumors collided with visual proof, sparking dark cognition in Eli's mind. Caldwell's empire was built not only on the trade of these innocent lives, but also on their brutal slaughter, a secret menu for the gruesomely rich, obscured under the guise of exclusivity. "This has been happening right under our noses," Eli murmured, voice a cracked edge in the silence. He traced the timestamps on the underexposed images, matching them to the record numbers on Caldwell's statements. Everything aligned, a sickening confirmation of Eli's worst fears. Dr. Caroline Price emerged in the doorway, concern etched on her features as she watched Eli sift through the evidence. "You've been at this for hours." Eli looked up, eyes shadowed with the weight of what he'd uncovered. "It's worse than we thought, Carolyn. As Eli spoke, each word a stone thrown into a pond, sending ripples of horror that settled deeply upon Caroline's expression. He's holding hunts on his land. High-priced kills of endangered species just for sport, Eli continued, disgust, staining every word. The blind kitten's mother didn't die in the wild. By chance she was hunted. Caroline's hand flew to her mouth, shock rendering her speechless. Her compassionate gaze drifted to the sleeping form of Luna, the blind bobcat kitten, nestled in a soft blanket. Understanding flooded the room, mutual realization that they stood at the edge of something much larger than they had anticipated. The kitten Luna wasn't merely a life saved from negligence. She was a survivor, a tangible thread linking them to Caldwell's horrific underbelly. Her survival, her collar, it's all evidence of Caldwell's operation. Eli's voice held a fierce resolve. This kitten is the key to unveiling his empire. Caroline's eyes lingered on the small, frail form, then returned to Eli, and the collar proves she was claimed as his property. It was clear now Luna was more than a symbol of innocence. She was a witness tucked away in plain sight, marking Caldwell's trail with each clouded step. Eli stood, breath steadying into determination. His gentle nature melded with an emerging fire, ignited by the truth entrusted to his hands. We can't let them continue. Not one more hunt, not one more kill. So, the path unfolded before them, hard and uncompromising. It led through darkness and into confrontation with a power-hungry man, but it drew them closer, each step forging clarity against the menace of Caldwell's shadow. Side by side, they faced the daunting challenge, the unraveling of a hidden empire, woven from the fabric of fear and ostentation. With every document exposed, every dark moment pieced together, Eli understood the magnitude of Luna's plight. The way of justice was grim and unyielding, but he knew it walked upon truth. Eli crouched low in the underbrush, the crisp autumn air biting at his cheeks. Branches brushed against his jacket as he inched forward, scanning the dense forest. Nearby, Caroline and Hank Lawson mirrored his caution, each step carefully placed to avoid snapping twigs underfoot. Ever since discovering the true depths of Caldwell's crimes, they'd taken the fight to him, starting with those confined woods. All clear, Hank whispered, his voice barely rising above the rustle of leaves. Years of experience weighted his words, lending them gravity that kept Eli vigilant. Hank's weathered face was etched with the resolve of someone who had seen too much, yet refused to turn away from battle. Good, Eli replied, eyes narrowing on the path ahead. He could feel Luna's small form shifting in the pouch close to his chest, her presence a reminder of what they were fighting for. We need to make the most of this daylight. Together they pressed on, their destination a rocky outcrop overlooking one of Caldwell's hidden holding pens. It was there they hoped to capture footage of irrefutable evidence of his illegal captive operations. Despite the danger lurking behind every shadow, Eli drew strength from the pair beside him. Caroline, with medical bags slung over her shoulder, kept pace with practiced calm. Her journey from reluctant aid to unwavering ally had been swift, yet unshakable, melding pragmatism with moral courage. Hank, once sidelined by a tarnished career, now emerged from the shadows to lend his knowledge of surrounding lands and ingrained survival instinct. What made you decide to help, Hank? Eli asked as they moved through the thicket. The question hung heavy. Curious about what had kindled the fire in Hank's spirit after years on the fringe, Hank glanced at Eli, a flicker of something unspoken passing through his eyes. The same thing that drives you, I reckon. Justice, redemption, righting the past. Carolyn nodded in agreement. And for me, it was the realization of how much I'd been hiding from. We can't pretend any longer, not with what we know now. They crested the rise, the rocky ledge coming into view as sunlight danced across its gray surface. Slipping silently into position, they surveyed the scene below. A collection of wooden structures sat sheltered between ancient trees, sturdy dwellings concealing doomed creatures trapped within. Eli set up the tripod, steadying the camera's lens on its quarry. Each click sealed another piece of evidence of entrapment, misery, and survival. It felt like confronting an age-old monster with little more than bottled resolve, but they weren't alone in their pursuit. Caldwell's hired hunters prowled the vast expanse, driven by lucrative promises to sniff out intruders. The inevitable clash brewed beneath the forest's canopy, a dangerous game of hide-and-seek. Looks like they've tightened security, Caroline observed, nodding towards uniformed figures pacing near cage doors, rifles slung across shoulders. We can't stay long. Hank's voice dropped, instincts heightened by the potential threat. Feeling the weight of responsibility, Eli made a decision. We need to split up. Hank, take the footage back to the safe house. We'll cover for you while you're gone. Gotcha. Hank replied, already gathering the film as Eli dismantled the setup. Just be careful. Caldwell doesn't play by the rules. Slow and silent, Hank slipped into the undergrowth, vanishing like smoke carried on the breeze. It was a testament to their newfound alliance that trust flowed with ease, its roots entwined in shared purpose. Eli glanced at Caroline, new concerns masking his relief. We should circle back, find a safer vantage point. No sooner had the words left his lips than distant voices reached their ears, followed by snapping brush Caldwell's hunters, determined to uncover the outlaws in their midst. A chilling tension seized Eli's heart. Adrenaline surged, directing his steps as instincts took over. Run, he urged Caroline, veering off into the labyrinthine forest. She followed close, their feet pounding against earth as the wooded world around them blurred. The chase had begun, and behind their retreat swelled the relentless tide of pursuers. We need to lose them, Caroline gasped, her breath labored but unyielding. Moving, Eli felt Luna's warmth against him, propelling him faster, deeper, away from the encroaching threat. Minutes stretched to eternity, but Eli's determination burned bright against the encroaching dark. It was the fire spark of resistance, fueled by noble intent and the lives that hung in balance. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence enveloped them. The trees bowed to whispering winds, tall sentinels keeping their secrets safe. They'd evaded capture for now, but the threat loomed ever near. Eli rested against a coarse-barked tree, relief mingling with dread. His quiet nature felt almost out of place amidst turmoil, yet he knew it was that very quietude which allowed resolute action when needed most. He faced Caroline, seeing his own resolve mirrored in her eyes. "We still have time," she assured him, voice steadied by a nurtured, calm nodding. Eli adjusted Luna's pouch, ensuring the kitten's safety despite the chaotic flight. "There's more we need to uncover, more we need to stop." Caroline's expression softened, and for a fleeting moment, the bond shared between them illuminated the path forward, a journey forged in unity, where trust kept fear at bay, and hope outshone despair. Back at their hidden refuge, Hank awaited their return, the footage resting in his capable hands, a testament to their combined efforts. Tired but unwavering, Eli joined Hank at the table, poring over the collected trove of secrets that could turn the tide. "We've got enough to make them listen," Hank murmured, voice bolstered by renewed conviction. "Let's give Caldwell something he can't ignore." As darkness caved to dawn, Eli knew the ball had moved to their court. They were no longer just shields against wrongdoing, they were the spearhead of change, racing to expose the truth behind a web of corruption. Their fragile alliance grew stronger with each humble victory, driving Eli forward, assured by the belief of those around him. The forest remained watchful but calm, holding its breath for what would come next. As the sun crested the skyline, marking the beginning of another day, purpose hammered against Eli's chest. Through tangled branches and unseen paths, they would carry just as steadfast companions lighting the way. Together, the trio stepped anew into the unknown, armed with hope and courage to disrupt an empire built on sin. They weren't just allies, they were a force, driven by more than themselves, willing to confront the shadow they'd uncovered and bring the light. The morning mist clung low to the ground as Eli made his way through the preserve's outer fence. Something felt off. The usual chorus of birdsong was absent, replaced by an unsettling silence that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Luna stirred in her makeshift sling, pressing closer to his chest. Even the blind kitten seemed to sense the tension in the air. Eli's rough hands gently steadied her as he moved cautiously forward, each step calculated and precise. A twig snapped somewhere to his left, then another to his right. The sound of boots crushing leaves echoed from multiple directions. Eli's heart hammered against his ribs as the reality sank in. He had walked straight into a trap. Well, look who finally showed up," a gravelly voice called out. Through the thinning fog, Caldwell himself emerged, flanked by 4 armed men. Their rifles weren't aimed yet, but hands rested ready on triggers. Eli's mind raced. The preserve stretched for hundreds of acres, but he was cut off from the main road. Behind him, more boots crunched through the underbrush, at least 3 more men closing in from the rear. "Hand over the cat, Turner," Caldwell commanded, his weathered face twisted in a cold smile. "Maybe then we'll just rough you up instead of making you disappear." Eli's fingers curled protectively around Luna. The small bobcat trembled against him, but her presence steeled his resolve. "You'll have to kill me first," he replied, his quiet voice carrying unexpected strength. Caldwell's smile vanished. "That can be arranged." He nodded to his men, who raised their weapons. In that split second, Eli's mind clicked into survival mode. Years of working with wildlife had taught him to think like the animals he protected. The preserve was designed for hunting, but that meant it was also designed with natural escape routes that prey animals would instinctively seek out. Without warning, Eli spun and sprinted toward a dense thicket of thorny brush. Shots rang out, but he knew they'd hesitate to fire directly. Caldwell wanted Luna alive. The thorns tore at his clothes as he crashed through, but he barely felt the sting. After him, Caldwell's roar echoed through the trees. "Spread out and cut him off." Eli's knowledge of animal behavior became his lifeline. He remembered tracking injured deer, how they would double back to confuse predators. Keeping low, he curved his path, using the sound of his pursuers to gauge their positions. The preserve had been designed with natural funnels, places where the terrain would naturally guide animals toward the waiting hunters. But Eli knew these same features could be used in reverse. He headed for a steep ravine, one that the local wildlife used as a corridor. Boots pounded behind him, getting closer. A bullet splintered bark near his head. Luna remained eerily still, as if understanding the need for absolute silence. The ravine appeared, ahead, a 12-foot drop with a narrow game trail winding down one side. Without slowing, Eli swung himself over the edge, using roots and rocks to control his descent. Above, voices shouted in frustration as the hunters were forced to find a safer way down. At the bottom, Eli didn't pause. He knew the ravine led to a series of underground springs that had carved out small caves in the limestone, places where wounded animals would hide, where the scent would be masked by mineral-rich water. His lungs burned as he pushed himself harder, staying in the shallow stream to hide his tracks. The sound of running water would help cover his movement, but it also meant he couldn't hear his pursuers. Another shot cracked through the air, closer this time. They were trying to hurt him, using the same techniques they used on their exotic game. But Eli had spent countless hours observing how animals escaped such tactics. He spotted a fallen tree spanning the ravine above. In one fluid motion, he ducked into a small cave entrance beneath it, pressing himself and Luna into the darkness. The limestone walls amplified the sound of boots splashing through the stream. "He has to be here somewhere," a voice called out, frustration evident in its tone. "Spread out. Check every hole." Another responded. Eli controlled his breathing, using techniques he'd learned to avoid startling injured wildlife. Luna remained remarkably calm, her trust in him absolute. Minutes stretched like hours as boots crunched overhead and flashlight beams swept the cave entrance. The hunters were getting careless in their frustration, making more noise, becoming less coordinated in their search. Eli waited until their voices grew distant, upstream, then silently emerged from his hiding spot. Instead of running, he moved slowly, deliberately like a fox, avoiding hounds. Every step was placed with purpose, avoiding loose rocks and sticks that might betray his position. He worked his way toward the preserve's maintenance road, knowing it would be the last place they'd expect him to go. The road came into view through the trees. It was exposed, dangerous but also his best chance at escape. Eli counted to 3, then made his move. He burst from cover at full speed, his feet pounding against gravel. Shouts erupted behind him as he was spotted. The maintenance gate lay ahead, its heavy chain no match for the bolt cutters he'd brought just in case. The metal links parted with a satisfying snap. A truck engine roared to life somewhere in the preserve. They would try to cut him off at the main road, but Eli had one more trick, one more lesson learned from the animals he'd rehabilitated. Instead of taking the obvious route, he veered off into a drainage culvert that ran under the main road. It was tight, claustrophobic, but wide enough to crawl through. Luna pressed closer against him as water soaked through his clothes. The sound of vehicles thundering overhead reverberated through the metal pipe. Eli kept moving, ignoring the cold and the dark, focusing only on the dim light at the far end. When he finally emerged on the other side, he was well beyond the preserve's boundaries. His clothes were soaked and torn, his body battered, but Luna was safe. More importantly, he had proven that Caldwell's money and men were no match for someone who truly understood the ways of the wild. The sound of engines faded into the distance as Caldwell's men searched in the wrong direction. Eli allowed himself a small smile as he checked on Luna. The blind Bobcat Kitten purred softly, unaware that her protector had just outsmarted some of the most dangerous men in the county. "That's right, little one," he whispered, his quiet voice carrying a new confidence. "Sometimes the best way to beat a hunter is to think like their prey." He began the long walk back to safety, knowing that while he had won this round, the real fight was far from over. The morning sun cast long shadows across Hunter Caldwell's sprawling estate as Eli Turner walked up the manicured driveway, his heart pounding but his steps steady. In his hand, he clutched a thick manila envelope containing weeks of carefully gathered evidence. Dr. Caroline Price and Hank Lawson had helped him document everything. Photographs of illegal, exotic animals, financial records of suspicious transactions, and most damning of all, the leather collar that had started it all, behind him. Hidden in strategic positions, Caroline and Hank waited with state wildlife officers and federal agents. They had coordinated this confrontation carefully, ensuring that this time, Caldwell couldn't simply make the evidence disappear. Eli reached the massive oak door and knocked firmly. The sound echoed through the mansion. After a moment, Caldwell himself opened it. His expensive suit, a stark contrast to Eli's worn jeans and work boots. "Well, if it isn't the animal lover," Caldwell sneered, leaning against the doorframe. "Come to return what's mine." "Actually," Eli said, his voice stronger than he expected, "I'm here to show you something." He pulled out the documentation, spreading photographs across Caldwell's imported marble entry table. "We have proof of everything: the smuggling operations, the illegal hunting parties, the endangered species you've had killed for sport." Caldwell picked up one of the photos, examining it with an amused expression. His laugh echoed off the high ceilings. This is nothing. Do you know how many politicians I have in my pocket? How many judges call me friend?" He tossed the photo aside carelessly. "You're just a nobody who doesn't understand how the world works." "Maybe," Eli admitted, "but I understand right from wrong." He pulled out the collar, watching Caldwell's face change ever so slightly. "And so do they." On cue, Caroline and Hank emerged from their hiding spots, accompanied by uniformed officers. Caldwell's amusement vanished, replaced by something darker. His hand moved to his desk drawer. "Don't," Eli warned. But Caldwell was already moving. The gun appeared so fast it seemed to materialize in Caldwell's hand. The first shot went wide, shattering an expensive vase. Eli dove behind a leather armchair as chaos erupted. Officers shouted commands while Caroline screamed his name. "You think you can take everything I've built?" Caldwell roared, firing again. Wood splintered near Eli's head. "I own this county." Eli crawled behind a heavy bookcase, heart hammering in his chest. He could hear officers returning fire, glass breaking, and Caldwell's increasingly unhinged shouts. This was the real Caldwell, not the polished businessman, but the ruthless hunter who treated everything and everyone as prey. A sudden silence fell. Eli risked a peek around the bookcase. Caldwell stood in the center of the room, gun trained on Eli, but now surrounded by officers with weapons drawn. "It's over, Caldwell." Hank's gravelly voice cut through the tension. "Drop it." For a moment, Caldwell's finger tightened on the trigger. Eli could see the calculation in his eyes. One last shot at the man who had ruined everything. But before he could pull the trigger, two officers tackled him from behind. The gun clattered across the marble floor as Caldwell went down hard. Eli stood shakily, his ears ringing from the gunfire. Caroline rushed to his side, checking him for injuries. Through the mansion's broken windows, he could see more police. Vehicles arriving, their lights painting the elegant facade in red and blue. "You okay?" Caroline asked, her hands trembling slightly as she helped him up. "Yeah," Eli nodded, watching as officers led a handcuffed Caldwell toward the door. "I think I am." Hank approached them, his limp more pronounced from the excitement. "They're already finding more evidence. Shipping containers out back, underground, pens documents that'll take weeks to sort through. Caldwell's empire is falling apart faster than a house of cards in a tornado." The man who had seemed untouchable just weeks ago was now being pushed into the back of a police car, his carefully maintained facade crumbling along with his kingdom of cruelty. In the days that followed Caldwell's arrest, the full scope of his operation came to light. Federal agents uncovered dozens of endangered animals in hidden enclosures across his property. Documents revealed a network of wealthy clients who had paid astronomical sums to hunt exotic creatures. The evidence was overwhelming, and Caldwell's expensive lawyers couldn't make it disappear. Eli watched from the sidelines as officers led animal after animal to safety. Some were destined for sanctuaries, others for rehabilitation centers. Each rescue felt like a personal victory, but none meant more than the moment he helped transfer Luna, the blind Bobcat Kitten, to her new home, the White Pine Wildlife Sanctuary, sprawled across 50 acres of protected land. Its director, Sarah Martinez, met them at the gates, her experienced eyes taking in Luna's condition. "She'll have a good life here," Sarah assured him, leading them to a specially prepared enclosure. "We've worked with visually impaired wildcats before." Eli carried Luna's carrier carefully, remembering how different things had been when he'd first found her scared, alone, marked as someone's property. Now she was going to a place where people would understand and care for her special needs. "No," Caroline said, walking beside him. "When you first brought her into my clinic, I thought you were just being stubborn, another soft-hearted volunteer who couldn't accept reality." Eli smiled, remembering that day. "I was stubborn." "You were right," Caroline corrected, "and brave." Not many people would have stood up to someone like Caldwell. They reached Luna's new enclosure, a spacious area with plenty of hiding spots, climbing structures, and safety features designed for a blind animal. Sarah helped them settle Luna in, explaining how they would slowly introduce her to her new environment. "Will she be okay?" Eli asked, watching Luna explore her surroundings with cautious steps. Sarah nodded. "She's young, adaptable, and she's got something special. She survived against impossible odds, just like someone else I know." The local news had picked up the story, of course. "Local wildlife volunteer exposes criminal empire," ran across headlines. People who had once dismissed Eli as naive now looked at him differently. But that wasn't what mattered to him. What mattered was watching Luna grow stronger each day. What mattered was knowing that Caldwell's other animals were being rescued, his hunting grounds transformed into a legitimate conservation area. What mattered was that sometimes, standing up for what's right, no matter how impossible it seems, can change everything. Hank joined them at the sanctuary, leaning on his cane as they watched Luna navigate her new home. "You know," the old ranger said, "I spent years trying to catch Caldwell, and all it took was one stubborn kid with a big heart, and a tiny blind bobcat," Eli added, smiling as Luna found a sunny spot to rest. "Sometimes the smallest things make the biggest differences." Caroline agreed, slipping her hand into Eli's standing there. Watching Luna safe in her new home, Eli felt the truth of his journey settle into place. He wasn't just the quiet volunteer anymore. He had faced down one of the most dangerous men in the county, not with violence or threats, but with unwavering compassion and determination. In saving Luna, he had found his own strength, the kind that comes from standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. Luna's story had transformed from one of tragedy to triumph, and in the process, Eli had transformed too, from someone who felt powerless against injustice to someone who had proved that one person's courage could make all the difference. Before we dive in, drop a quick hello in the comments, maybe. Your name, maybe your city. Every reply reminds me this isn't just my voice, but our space. If even one moment stayed with you, hit subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story written gently for the heart.